Then why? Do you look at me like you remember me? Elena Whitmore's voice trembled, barely louder than the wind threading through the dead trees. Yet the massive shadow beast above her stilled as if the forest itself had paused to listen, its breath slow and heavy against the cold night air, its presence overwhelming but not striking, not retreating, just watching, always watching. And Elena felt it again, that strange pull in her chest, like a memory she had never lived, yet somehow carried deep in her bones, the same pull that had followed her since the night her pack cast her out, the night they called her cursed, the night they said her wolf had died before it was ever born. She should have been afraid. Any sane person would have been, pinned beneath something so vast, so unnatural, its form shifting like living shadow under the pale glow of the moon. But fear did not come the way it should. Instead, there was only the sharp rhythm of her heartbeat and the warmth spreading through her fingertips as they pressed into the damp earth, grounding her, reminding her she was still here, still breathing, still choosing not to run. Just hours ago, she had stood at the edge of her pack's territory, the air thick with judgment, their eyes on her like she was something broken beyond repair, something dangerous, something to be erased quietly so the rest could feel safe. And she had said nothing as they turned their backs, as the gate closed, as the world she had known disappeared behind her without a single hand reaching out. She had walked for miles, maybe more, the forest swallowing the path, the sky darkening until only slivers of silver light filtered through the branches above. And still that feeling followed her, that whisper in her chest, guiding her deeper instead of warning her away. Now here she was, beneath a creature they would have called a monster, a thing to be hunted, destroyed, feared. Yet when she looked into its eyes, if they could even be called eyes beneath that shifting darkness, she didn't see rage, she didn't see hunger. She saw something else, something almost searching, and her breath caught as the realization brushed against her thoughts, fragile and impossible, as if one wrong move would shatter it. The beast leaned closer, its presence pressing into her like the weight of a storm about to break. And Elena's fingers curled slightly into the soil, her pulse quickening, but she didn't turn away, didn't close her eyes, because somewhere beneath the fear she refused to name, there was recognition, quiet and undeniable, threading through her like a second heartbeat. "I'm not afraid of you," she whispered, the words slipping free before she could question them. And for a moment, just a moment, the shadow seemed to hesitate, the darkness along its form rippling like disturbed water. And Elena felt it. The shift, subtle but real, like something ancient stirring awake. Her chest tightened, her memories flickering with images she couldn't fully grasp. Silver light, a voice she couldn't place, the echo of a promise long forgotten. And she realized with a sudden, breathless clarity that this moment, this impossible encounter, was not the beginning of something new, but the continuation of something that had been waiting for her all along. Something tied to the part of her everyone else had rejected, the part they had feared, the part they had called cursed. And yet here, in the heart of the dark forest, beneath the quiet gaze of a creature no one else would dare approach, that curse did not feel like weakness. It felt like a key slowly turning in a lock she had never known existed. The air shifted, subtle at first, like the forest itself was holding its breath, and Elena felt it travel through the ground beneath her palms. A low hum that did not belong to wind or earth, but to something older, something aware, and the shadow beast above her seemed to feel it too because its massive form stilled completely, the restless movement of darkness along its body slowing until it resembled a silhouette carved from night itself. And for a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Elena swallowed, her throat dry, her pulse loud in her ears, but still she did not pull away. Because that pull inside her chest had grown stronger, no longer a whisper but a steady, insistent rhythm, guiding her, urging her forward in a way she could not explain. And her hand, almost of its own will, lifted from the ground and hovered just inches from the creature's shifting form, hesitating only for a fraction of a second before closing the distance, her fingertips brushing against something that felt neither solid nor air, but something in between, like touching the surface of water that held its shape. A quiet breath escaped her lips as warmth spread from that single point of contact, unexpected and gentle, nothing like the cold dread she had been taught to expect from creatures like this. And the beast did not recoil, did not lash out. Instead, it leaned closer, the space between them shrinking until she could feel its presence all around her, not suffocating, but surrounding, as if it was trying to understand her as much as she was trying to understand it. Elena's mind flickered with fragments she could not place, flashes of silver light. The echo of laughter carried on a breeze, a voice speaking her name in a tone she had never heard yet somehow recognized, and her chest tightened as the sensation deepened, threading through her memories and reshaping them into something unfamiliar yet deeply personal. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice softer now, steadier, as if the fear that should have been there had been replaced by something else entirely, something fragile and growing. And for a moment, just a moment, the darkness at the center of the beast seemed to shift, not violently, not sharply, but gently, like a curtain stirring, revealing the faintest hint of something beneath, something brighter, something that did not belong to the shadows. Elena leaned in without realizing it, drawn by that fleeting glimpse, her breath catching as her forehead nearly brushed against the creature's form, and the world around them seemed to fade, the distant sounds of the forest dissolving into silence, leaving only the quiet connection forming between them. Invisible yet undeniable, her heart pounded as a single thought rose to the surface, clear and impossible to ignore, that this was not an accident, that she had not been cast out only to wander into danger, but to be led here, to this exact moment, to this exact being, and the realization both frightened and steadied her at the same time. The warmth in her chest spread further, reaching her throat, her lips, and before doubt could take hold, before the memory of every warning she had ever been given could pull her back, she closed the final distance, her eyes falling shut as her lips brushed softly against the place where the darkness seemed thinnest, the contact brief but real, and in that instant, everything changed, not with a violent surge or a blinding flash, but with a quiet, powerful shift that moved through the air like a breath finally released. And Elena felt it pass through her, through the creature, through the space between them, as if something long dormant had been awakened by the simplest, gentlest act she had ever made. The moment her lips touched the shifting darkness, the forest exhaled, a long, quiet release that seemed to ripple through every branch and leaf, and Elena felt it move through her like a current, warm and steady, as if something deep within her had finally found the place it was meant to belong. Her eyes flew open, her breath catching as the shadow beneath her fingers began to change, not violently, not in the way she had been taught to fear, but slowly, almost carefully, as though whatever lived inside that darkness was emerging with intention rather than force, and the air around them grew lighter, the heavy, suffocating weight of the shadows lifting inch by inch. She pulled back slightly, her heart racing now, not from fear, but from the overwhelming sense that she was witnessing something impossible, something no one else had ever seen, and the creature before her responded to that small movement, its massive form lowering, the shifting shadows thinning like mist touched by morning light. Elena's hands trembled as she kept them close, not quite touching anymore, but not retreating either, because she could feel it, that same warmth she had felt at the moment of contact, now spreading outward, unraveling whatever had bound this being in darkness for so long. The outline of the beast softened, its edges no longer sharp or undefined, and for a brief second, she thought she saw something human beneath it, a shape, a presence, a figure trying to surface through layers of shadow that were no longer holding together. Her pulse quickened, her breath shallow as she whispered, almost without meaning to, "It is okay. You are safe." And the words seemed to matter, not because they were loud or commanding, but because they carried something real, something steady, something that did not waver. The darkness responded again, pulling inward rather than outward this time, folding into itself like a tide retreating, revealing more of what lay beneath. And Elena's chest tightened as recognition brushed against her thoughts once more, stronger now, clearer, like a name on the edge of memory she could almost reach. The forest around them had gone completely still, even the wind holding back as if unwilling to disturb what was unfolding, and in that silence, Elena noticed the smallest detail that made everything shift inside her. The presence before her was no longer looking at her as something foreign, something to study, but as something known, something remembered. Her breath hitched as the last threads of shadow peeled away, not disappearing entirely, but settling around the figure now emerging. No longer a beast, no longer something unrecognizable, but a man kneeling before her, his form steady yet unfamiliar in its stillness, as if he had not worn it in a very long time. Elena froze, her mind struggling to catch up with what her eyes were seeing, her heart pounding as she took in the details slowly, carefully, as though moving too fast would shatter the moment. And then he moved, just slightly, his shoulders rising with a quiet breath, and his head lifted. When his eyes opened, the world seemed to narrow to that single moment, because they were not the empty void she had seen before, not shadow or darkness or anything unnatural, but human, undeniably human, clear and focused and fixed entirely on her. And Elena felt something inside her shift in response, something answering that gaze without hesitation. She did not step back, did not speak, could not even form a thought as the realization settled over her like a second skin that whatever she had just done, whatever connection had formed between them, had not only changed him, it had changed her too, and neither of them would ever be what they were before this moment again. He did not move right away, and that stillness carried a weight that was not threatening but unfamiliar, as if even the act of breathing in this form required intention, and Elena found herself holding her own breath without realizing it, her eyes fixed on him as though looking away might undo everything that had just happened. The faint glow of moonlight filtered through the branches above, catching along the edges of his figure, outlining him in soft silver, and she noticed how the remnants of shadow lingered around him like a fading echo, not gone, not entirely, but no longer consuming, no longer in control. His gaze remained locked on hers, steady and searching, and Elena felt it again, that pull, stronger now, clearer, no longer a distant whisper but a presence she could not ignore, threading through her thoughts, her breath, the very rhythm of her heartbeat. She shifted slightly where she knelt, the damp earth pressing into her palms, grounding her as reality struggled to settle around what she was seeing, what she was feeling, and yet nothing about this moment felt wrong, not in the way everything else in her life had been labeled wrong, broken, cursed. If anything, this felt like the first thing that had ever made sense. You. Her voice faltered, the word barely forming as she tried to grasp something solid, something she could hold on to in the middle of everything changing at once. But the question never fully came, because something in his expression shifted, subtle but unmistakable, as if he understood the question before she could ask it. His hand moved slowly, deliberately, lifting from his side as though testing the air itself, and Elena's breath caught as she watched the motion, not with fear, but with a quiet anticipation she did not fully understand. He did not reach for her immediately, did not close the space between them. Instead, his fingers hovered just short of her, mirroring the way she had reached for him moments before, and, for a second, time seemed to fold in on itself, reflecting that same fragile connection, that same unspoken choice. Elena felt warmth rise again in her chest, spreading outward, and without thinking, she lifted her own hand, closing the distance between them until her fingers brushed against his, the contact light, almost uncertain, but enough to send a soft, steady pulse through her, like something recognizing itself after being lost for far too long. His eyes flickered at that, a subtle shift that did not break his composure, but deepened it, as if the contact confirmed something he had already begun to realize. And when he finally spoke, his voice was low, measured, carrying a quiet strength that did not need to prove itself. "You are real," he said, the words simple, but weighted with something far deeper than their meaning alone. Elena's breath caught, her heart tightening at the sound, because there was something in the way he said it, something that made it feel as though he had not been certain of that until this moment, as though she had been more idea than person, more memory than reality. "Of course I am," she replied softly, though the certainty in her voice wavered slightly, not because she doubted herself, but because everything else around her felt like it was shifting into something she had never known before. His gaze softened, just enough to be seen, and the tension in his posture eased as though something long held in place had finally been released. and for a brief second, Elena saw it. Clearly, not the shadow, not the beast, but the man who had been buried beneath it all, the one who had been waiting, enduring, holding on. The realization settled into her slowly, steady and undeniable, that she had not simply stumbled into this moment by chance, that whatever force had guided her here had done so with purpose, because the connection between them was not fragile in the way new things often were. It was deep, rooted, as if it had existed long before either of them had understood it. And as the quiet of the forest wrapped around them once more, Elena felt the truth of it settle into her chest with a calm certainty she had never known before, that whatever came next, whatever this connection meant, it had already begun, and there was no returning to the life she had been cast out of, because that version of her no longer existed in the presence of the man now kneeling before her. The contact between their hands did not fade. It deepened, subtle but undeniable, like a quiet thread pulling tighter with every passing second, and Elena became aware of something shifting inside her again, not the sudden rush from before, but something steadier, something anchoring, as if her presence here was no longer uncertain but chosen, confirmed. She drew in a slow breath, the cool night air filling her lungs, and for the first time since she had entered the forest, she did not feel like an outsider within it, the shadows no longer pressing in but settling around them in a calm, almost watchful stillness, as though the forest itself recognized what had just occurred. The man before her, Kale, though she had not yet spoken his name, watched her with that same focused intensity, but now there was something else layered beneath it, something quieter, more human, something that carried the weight of awareness returning after a long absence. His fingers shifted slightly against hers, not tightening, not pulling away, simply adjusting, as if relearning the sensation of touch, and Elena felt that small movement echo through her, sending a faint warmth along her arm and into her chest. She swallowed, her thoughts beginning to form again, though they felt slower now, more deliberate, as if her mind was trying to keep pace with everything unfolding around her. "What happened to you?" she asked softly, the question slipping out before she could stop it, and for a moment, he did not answer, his gaze drifting past her as though searching through something far away, something buried deep beneath layers of time and silence. When his attention returned to her, there was a flicker of something in his eyes, not confusion, not fear, but recognition tinged with something heavier, something that spoke of memory returning piece by piece. "I was waiting," he said slowly, his voice measured, as though each word had to be chosen with care, and Elena felt a quiet tension settle in her chest at that, because the answer did not feel complete. It felt like the beginning of something larger, something he was only just starting to understand himself. She shifted her weight slightly, her knees pressing into the damp earth, but she did not break the connection between them, could not bring herself to, because the more she stayed, the clearer it became that this moment was not fragile in the way she had expected. It was stable, grounded, as if it had been building long before she arrived. The faint remnants of shadow around him stirred gently, not with threat, but with a soft, almost protective motion, like a lingering part of him that had not yet fully faded. And Elena watched it carefully, not with fear, but with a growing curiosity, because it did not feel separate from him. It felt like something that had once been necessary, something that had held him together when nothing else could. "Waiting for what?" she asked, her voice quieter now, more careful. And this time, when he looked at her, there was no distance in his gaze, no searching, only certainty, steady and unshaken. His fingers shifted again, this time curling just slightly around hers, not gripping, not holding tightly, but enough to anchor the connection between them. And Elena felt her breath catch at the subtle gesture, because it carried more meaning than any words he could have spoken. "For you," he said, and the simplicity of it settled into the space between them with a quiet finality, as though it had always been true, as though it had never been anything else. Elena's heart tightened, her pulse quickening as the words echoed in her mind, not loud, not overwhelming, but persistent, threading through everything she had believed about herself, about the life she had been forced to leave behind, about the identity that had been shaped by rejection and doubt. For the first time, she felt that narrative begin to loosen its hold, not because she had proven anyone wrong, but because something here, something in him, recognized her in a way no one else ever had. Not as broken, not as cursed, but as something necessary, something meant. The realization settled slowly, deeply, and as the quiet of the forest wrapped around them once more, Elena understood with a clarity that left no room for doubt that whatever path had led her here had not ended. It had only just begun, and standing before her was not just the answer to a mystery, but the beginning of a truth she had never been allowed to see until now. The words settled between them with a quiet certainty that Elena could not shake, not because they were loud or overwhelming, but because they felt true in a way nothing else ever had, and she found herself searching his face again, studying the details she had only just begun to notice, the way his expression held steady even as something deeper moved beneath it, something ancient and newly awakened at the same time. Her fingers remained in his, and now the contact felt different, no longer tentative but grounded, like something that had chosen to stay rather than something that might disappear if she moved too quickly. She drew in a slow breath, her thoughts beginning to align, and with that clarity came a question she could no longer ignore, one that pressed against the edges of everything she had just experienced. "You said you were waiting," she murmured, her voice soft but steady. "But you did not know me." "Not really." And as the words left her, she felt the faintest tension. Return, not in him, but in the space between them, like a thread being tested for the first time. His gaze did not break, but something shifted behind it, something deeper than simple recognition, and Elena realized that whatever answer he carried was not simple, not something that could be explained in a single breath. His thumb moved slightly against her hand, a small, almost absent motion, but it sent a quiet warmth through her, grounding her even as uncertainty tried to rise. "I did not remember you," he said at last, his voice low, each word deliberate. "But I knew you would come." And Elena felt that statement settle into her chest with a strange, steady weight, because it did not feel like a guess. It felt like something certain, something that had existed long before either of them had understood it. She frowned slightly, not in doubt, but in concentration, as fragments of her own memories stirred again. Not clear images, but impressions, sensations that brushed against her mind without fully forming. Like echoes she could almost hear if she stood still long enough. The forest around them remained quiet, the silence no longer empty but full, as if it was holding space for something yet to be revealed, and Elena found herself leaning slightly closer without realizing it, drawn by the need to understand, to connect the pieces that refused to stay separate. "That does not make sense," she whispered, though there was no accusation in her tone, only curiosity, only the quiet determination that had carried her this far. His expression softened again, just enough to be seen, and for a moment, the distance between who he had been and who he was now seemed to blur, as if both versions of him existed at once beneath her gaze. "It will," he replied, and there was something in the way he said it that made her pause, not because it answered her question, but because it promised something more, something still unfolding. The faint remnants of shadow around him stirred again, but this time they did not obscure. They circled slowly, like a memory that refused to leave entirely, and Elena watched them with a new understanding, realizing that they were not separate from him, not something to be feared or erased, but something that had been part of his survival, something that had endured alongside him until now. Her chest tightened at that thought, because it mirrored something within her, something she had spent her life trying to hide, something she had been told was wrong, and yet here, in this moment, it felt like those parts were not weaknesses but pieces of a larger truth she had never been allowed to see. She shifted slightly, her grip on his hand firming without conscious thought, and he did not pull away, did not question it, only remained, steady and present, as if the connection between them no longer needed to be proven, only acknowledged. "Then help me understand," she said quietly, her voice carrying a softness that did not weaken her words but strengthened them, because there was no fear left in them. Now, only resolve. His gaze held hers, unwavering, and in that moment, Elena felt it again, that subtle shift in the air, that quiet sense that something was drawing closer, not physically, but in truth, in clarity, in the unveiling of something that had been hidden for far too long. and she realized with a calm certainty that whatever answers were coming, they would not only change what she knew about him, they would change everything she believed about herself as well. The quiet between them stretched, but it was no longer uncertain, no longer fragile. It carried weight now, meaning, as if every second that passed was building towards something inevitable, and Elena felt it in the steady rhythm of her pulse, in the warmth still lingering where their hands touched, in the way the forest seemed to lean inward without moving, listening. She held his gaze, refusing to look away, because something inside her told her that whatever truth was coming would be found. There first, in the way he looked at her, in the way he did not hesitate, did not question her presence the way everyone else always had. His breathing was calm now, measured, no longer the heavy presence of something bound or restrained, but something controlled, aware, and yet there was a tension beneath it, not fear, not resistance, but something like restraint, like he was holding back a truth that had not fully settled into words yet. Elena felt it before he spoke, that shift, subtle but unmistakable, as if something unseen had aligned between them, and her chest tightened slightly in response, not with anxiety, but with anticipation. There was a time. He began, his voice quieter now, but deeper, as if it carried something older than the moment they stood in, when the shadows were not a prison, and Elena's breath caught, her mind immediately trying to grasp what that meant. But before she could form a question, he continued, each word steady, deliberate. They were a shield, a bond, something chosen, and something in the way he said it made her heart skip, because it did not sound like a story, it sounded like a memory. She swallowed, her fingers tightening slightly around his without thinking. And he did not pull away, only shifted closer, the distance between them narrowing just enough that she could feel the warmth of him more clearly now, real and undeniable. Then what changed? She asked, her voice soft but urgent, because she could feel it, that this was the edge of something important, something that would not only explain him, but her. His gaze held hers, unwavering, and for a moment, the faintest trace of something like pain flickered there, not sharp, not overwhelming, but deep, like something remembered rather than felt. And when he spoke again, his voice carried that same quiet weight. It was not meant to last, he said, and Elena felt the words settle into her chest, heavy with meaning she did not yet fully understand, not without balance. And her breath hitched at that, because the word felt familiar, too familiar, like something she had heard long ago but could not place. Her thoughts flickered again, fragments rising, a sense of standing in moonlight, of reaching out, of choosing something without knowing the cost. And her chest tightened as the sensation passed just as quickly as it came, leaving behind only the echo of something important. Balance between what? She pressed, her voice barely above a whisper now, because the air between them felt charged, not with danger, but with revelation. His fingers shifted again around hers, a quiet grounding gesture that steadied her even as her thoughts threatened to spiral. And when he answered, his voice was softer than before, but no less certain, between what we are and what we choose to become. And something inside Elena stilled completely at those words, because they did not feel like an explanation. They felt like a truth she had always known but had never been allowed to understand. Her breath slowed, her gaze never leaving his, and in that moment, she realized that whatever had happened to him, whatever had turned him into something feared, something hidden, was not simply a curse placed from the outside. It was something tied to choice, to consequence, to something far more personal than she had imagined. And as that realization settled into her, she felt it again, that quiet, undeniable connection between them, not weakening, not uncertain, but growing stronger with every truth revealed, as if the more she understood, the closer she came to something that had been waiting for her long before she had ever stepped into this forest. The words lingered in the air between them, quiet yet undeniable, and Elena felt them settle into her like something that had been waiting to be understood, her breath slowing as her thoughts shifted from confusion into something deeper, something closer to recognition, because the idea of choice, of becoming, it did not feel foreign. It felt familiar in a way she could no longer ignore. Her fingers tightened slightly around his, not out of fear but out of instinct, as if holding on to him. would keep the truth from slipping away before she could fully grasp it. And she noticed the way his gaze softened in response, not with pity, not with distance, but with something steady, something that met her exactly where she stood. "I did not choose this," she said quietly, the words leaving her before she could stop them, because they had lived inside her for too long, shaped by every whispered insult. Every moment she had been made to feel like something less than whole. "They said I was born wrong." And as soon as she spoke, she felt the old weight try to rise again, that familiar tightening in her chest, that instinct to pull back, to shield herself. But it did not take hold the way it once had. His grip on her hand shifted just enough to ground her. And when he spoke, his voice carried a calm certainty that cut through the doubt before it could fully form. "They were wrong," he said, not forcefully, not with anger, but with a quiet conviction that left no room for argument. And Elena felt something inside her pause, something that had been bracing itself for contradiction but found none. She searched his face again, looking for hesitation, for uncertainty, but there was none, only that same steady recognition, and it unsettled her in a way she did not expect, because she realized that he was not trying to convince her. He was stating something he already knew. "Then what am I?" she asked, her voice softer now, not defensive, not guarded, but open in a way she had never allowed herself to be before. And for a moment, he did not answer, not because he did not have one, but because the answer seemed to carry more weight than the question itself. The faint shadows around him stirred again, not restless, not threatening, but present, like a memory that refused to disappear entirely, and Elena felt her attention drawn to them, not with fear, but with understanding, because she could feel it now, the connection between what he had been and what he was becoming. And something inside her responded to it, quietly, instinctively. "You are not what they named you," he said at last, his voice lower now, more deliberate. "You are what remained when everything else fell away." And the words struck something deep within her, not sharply, but with a quiet, steady force that made her breath catch as the meaning settled in. She did not fully understand it, not yet, but she felt it, the truth of it, the way it aligned with the parts of herself she had been taught to ignore, the parts that had never fit into the expectations placed on her. And for the first time, she did not feel the need to hide them. Her gaze dropped briefly to where their hands were joined, and she noticed how natural it felt now, how the contact no longer carried hesitation but certainty, as if it had always been meant to be there. And when she looked back up at him, there was something new in her expression, something steadier, something that had not been there before. "And you?" she asked quietly, because she could not ignore it anymore. The way his presence felt both familiar and unknown at the same time. The way his words carried the weight of something larger than either of them alone. "What are you becoming?" And this time, when he met her gaze, there was no pause, no hesitation, only a calm, unwavering truth that settled into the space between them as naturally as breath. "Something I was never meant to be alone," he said, and Elena felt those words echo through her, not as a question, not as a possibility, but as a realization that had already begun to take shape, binding their paths together in a way neither of them could step away from, even if they tried. The truth of his words did not settle all at once. It unfolded slowly, like the first light before dawn, and Elena felt it move through her in quiet waves, steady and undeniable, reshaping something deep within her that had once been defined by doubt and silence. Her hand remained in his, no longer questioning, no longer uncertain, and she realized that she was not holding on out of fear of losing him, but because she no longer wanted to let go, because whatever this connection was, it had already become part of her, as natural as breath, as certain as the ground beneath her. The forest around them seemed to respond to that shift, the stillness softening, the shadows no longer watching but resting, as if the tension that had once lived here had finally found release. And Elena drew in a slow breath, the air feeling different now, lighter, clearer, like something unseen had been lifted. She looked at him again, really looked this time, not just at what he was now, but at what he carried, the quiet strength beneath his stillness, the weight of something endured and something reclaimed, and she felt it echo within her, that same resilience, that same quiet refusal to disappear, even when the world had tried to make her small. Then we are not finished, she said softly, the words forming with a calm certainty she had never known before, and his gaze met hers without hesitation, as if he had been waiting for her to say it, not because he needed to hear it, but because she needed to understand it. His fingers shifted around hers again, this time more firmly, not to hold her in place, but to stand with her, and Elena felt the difference immediately. The way the connection between them was no longer about finding each other, but about what came next. No, he replied, his voice steady, carrying that same quiet certainty that had guided every word he had spoken. This is where it begins. And something in her chest tightened, not with fear, but with the weight of possibility, of a future that did not follow the path she had once believed was set for her. She rose slowly from where she knelt, her legs unsteady for a moment before finding their strength, and he moved with her, not pulling, not leading, but matching her movement as if they were already in step without needing to try. The space between them shifted as they stood, no longer divided by uncertainty, but joined by something deeper, something that did not need to be named to be understood. Elena glanced toward the edge of the forest, toward the direction she had come from, and for the first time, she did not feel the pull to return, did not feel the weight of what she had lost pressing against her, because she understood now that she had not been cast out into nothing. She had been led forward into something more. When she looked back at him, there was no hesitation left in her expression, only quiet resolve, and the faintest hint of something new, something steady and unshaken. Then show me, she said, her voice calm, but carrying a strength that had not been there before. And he did not question her, did not doubt her, only met her gaze with that same unwavering certainty, as if he had known from the very beginning that she would choose this, that she would step forward rather than retreat. The first light of dawn began to filter through the trees, soft and pale, touching the edges of the world around them, and Elena felt it brush against her skin, warm and real, grounding her in a moment that no longer felt uncertain or fragile, but clear, defined, and entirely her own. And as they turned together, stepping forward into that growing light, Elena understood with a calm, unshakable certainty that whatever lay ahead would not be something she faced alone, because the path that had once separated them had already become one, and there was no going back to who she had been before she chose to step into the unknown and become something more.